Hey everyone, thanks for checking into our latest TDR psychedelic exclusive. Big week to say the least. We had the MAPS data and now big news late last Friday afternoon. Point72, led by Steve Cohen, purchased 18.95 million shares of Cybin, which trades on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol CYBN. As we welcome in back to the podcast, CEO Doug Drysdale. Good to see you, sir.
Hey, good to see you guys. Thanks for having me back on.
Good to have you back on. What a week it's been. Just for our viewers that are checking in right now, there is a little bit of a delay, so be patient with us here. But long story short, what a week it's been for this space. You finally feel like everything's starting to come into place now from what you've been trying to communicate to your investors for the last couple of years?
I do think that finally investors are starting to get it. This investment was possibly 2 years in the making. We've spent the last 2 years trying to build relationships with maybe 150 different institutional investors, and they've all been waiting for momentum and they've been waiting for data. And I think it's gradually coming together. I definitely think that one catalyst for us has been the acquisition of Small Pharma. I think that's given investors a lot of clarity about our deuterated DMT program. And how it fits with theirs, and clears up, some lack of clarity, I should say. So yeah, look, hugely flattering. It's always flattering when anyone invests, but tremendous to see this kind of support from the Cohens. Clearly they're very long on the space. Donated to MAPS and USONA and to Johns Hopkins. So great to be in that category with them.
Have you had any discussions with Steve Cohen in the past?
I've been in this space for quite a while, in the biotech space, and so definitely crossed paths with that fund before. But this was definitely a team effort. This was not on me. Our team has been working to build relationships not just with funds, but with family offices, other institutions, even philanthropic institutions. And so hopefully all that effort will pay off as we deliver data later this quarter.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, do you think that this is kind of like the tip of the spear with Point72 and Steve coming in, and then we're going to start to see more institutions start to pile in, especially as this industry matures? And we see like 003 coming down the pipe. We see the furthering of the DMT IP portfolio internally with yourselves, and we obviously start to see more momentum with MAPS and just the sector matures.
I think that's right. I think the recent syndicate that Compass put together for their financing was very impressive. Really good to see some of those strong fundamental, long-only biotech funds coming in. I think that's a really good validation. MAPS, as you know, is doing a raise. Hopefully they'll complete that soon. I'm sure they're getting lots of interest there. As we release data, hopefully we can continue to see that momentum from institutions. Definitely seeing a difference now, because there's real data to talk about rather than theoretics as we've had in the past.
So a quiet summer, as like a lot of people were working behind the scenes, and then out of nowhere we knew mergers and acquisitions were going to take place within this space. And then the big announcement, I think it was late August or first week of September, you acquired Small Pharma. We saw a company like Mindset Pharma that many people believed had some of the best IP in the industry that were acquired by a big pharma company in Otsuka. And right there was Small Pharma that many believed also had some of the strongest IP within the actual industry. So how did this all come together? Like, how long was this, been in the talks and putting this, like I said, together?
Look, I think the combination with Small Pharma just is common sense, and it's made sense for a long time, not just recently. I think that they have built a really strong team, a very strong IP portfolio. They made some terrific progress. Their DMT data is really striking, 6 months of durability from a single dose. But I think that they found themselves in a situation where they remain listed on a junior exchange in Canada, couldn't get liquidity, and so tough for them to scale. So this is a way for them to scale, and a way for them to get access to our senior listing, our liquidity, which is very strong, the best in this sector. But then you start to put these two programs together that have been completely adjacent. We've really done no overlapping work, which is incredible. Different analogs, different formulations, even different indications. So now we can instead of just sort of tiptoeing around each other, we can put all of that together and choose the best assets to take forward. So it just makes total sense.
Yeah.
And these have been conversations that have been going on, for a couple of years, I would say. But it just takes the right circumstance sometime to make it happen.
Yeah.
So I mean, with the combined IP portfolios and with this acquisition closing, with Small Pharma coming in, I mean, is it safe to say that the combined entity is the leader in the DMT space as it relates to research and data and really furthering that molecule with the rest of the pack?
Like, I think we totally own the deuterated DMT space, and deuterated DMT has a lot of advantages over regular DMT. We've managed now from a single injection to create an experience that's about 40 minutes long, with about 20 minutes of recovery. So very scalable. Can't do that with regular DMT unless you're using an IV infusion, and psychiatrists just don't have that equipment or staffing in their offices. So another benefit of deuteration is it makes the molecule really potent. So we can get this 40-minute experience, we believe, down into a really small volume injectable, like a subcutaneous injection. Small Pharma has been working on an intramuscular injection, one or the other. Should be very easy to administer right in the office, and in and out of the office maybe in an hour. So we think that the deuterated DMT programs could be best in class, without a doubt.
Wow.
And the best
An hour. That's it. Sorry, I got cut off there.
It's about a 40-minute experience from a single injection, and then about 20 minutes of recovery.
Wow. Well, we actually had a conversation earlier this week with a biotechnology analyst, and interesting things to say the least. But one of the biggest things that grabbed my attention was just institutions coming in, even before a lot of legalization happens, but they're going to lean towards companies that's easier for them to trade, which obviously you guys have with the listing on the New York Stock Exchange. So is there a lot of investor institutional interest, when you see announcements like last week's with MAPS? And let's face it, a lot of analysts, a lot of institutions, a lot of pension plans, they follow the biotech industry very, very closely. But I would think being listed on the New York Stock Exchange, even though we don't have, say, some of these compounds that are still a Schedule I drug, but the data alone is just so compelling for them to enter in now versus waiting to actually full-fledged legalization. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, now's the time to enter. I mean, the value creation happens from this point forward. I mean, typically value inflections in biotech they start around the end of phase 2, and they just accelerate after that. If you're waiting till commercialization, you kind of miss the boat in a way in terms of biotech return. And look, I don't think that the scheduling is an issue at all. I think there's plenty of precedents of molecules or products, I should say, being rescheduled. There's even a topical cocaine product approved. So if that can get rescheduled, then certainly psilocybin and DMT can. It's just going to take the data to get there. And at the moment, the scheduling isn't hurting us. It's not getting in the way. We've got an infrastructure in place that allows us to manage and manipulate these molecules and run clinical studies. So for investors, this sort of really well-defined pharmaceutical development pathway, I've always believed, is the safest way, because there's a clear path. It doesn't require a change in legislation. It doesn't require a change in policies. It simply requires us to go through the FDA process, and then the DEA to do their job. And once the FDA approves one of these molecules, the DEA has to reschedule, because the data itself will prove that the molecules are safe and effective, and then it does not, and at that point, doesn't fall into the category of Schedule I.
Yeah, which makes sense. I have to ask, with your background and having, well entrenched within the big pharma industry, we saw it's no longer like a question about whether or not they enter in this space. They are, because Otsuka obviously purchasing Mindset late last month. But what is some of the conversations and interests you have with, say, various big pharma companies? I'd love to hear how they're viewing this right now. And, when you get an announcement like last week that MAPS was pretty compelling data, that's got to put the industry more, no pun intended, on the map.
Yeah, look, they're definitely interested. We've spoken to dozens of pharma companies, and there's a lot of interest. How can you not be interested? This is the biggest innovation in psychiatry in 30 years. certainly from a pharmaceutical point of view. But they've been looking to understand the space, and the leaders in terms of time have had largely generic products, generic molecules, and the questions around IP. And IP is a big deal, obviously, to big pharma.
Yes.
Now we're starting to see novel molecules come through, like ours, and starting to have data, on the precipice of issuing data. And you'll start to see more interest. Yeah, they're also looking at scalability. So this is where deuterated DMT comes into play. I think you'll see deals getting done. For some firms, they've still got to get their heads around the cultural shift to bring psychedelics into their company. Jazz has made that shift. If they can sell GHB, then we should certainly be able to market psilocybin or DMT. But other companies need to deal with that internally. How do you, and especially if they're public, what's the cultural impact of that? How do they market it? I mean, we've seen that with J&J, that they haven't necessarily been out there shouting from the rooftops about Spravato. It's always kind of been somewhere down the line when it comes to marketing. It's definitely not a headline for them. So there is a bit of a cultural shift that needs to happen.
So what do you see as being the next inflection point or next watershed moment for the sector? Obviously we've reached a phase to where we've seen some consolidation. We've seen some M&A of some prime assets in the space, institutional interest. The MAPS data just came. What do you see as being next, going into year's end and Q1 of next year? That's exciting on the horizon for the psychedelic sector as a whole.
Well, looking outside of Cybin, I'd say that MAPS getting their NDA accepted by the FDA would be a big step. Yeah, I think that's a big one. I mean, we it's kind of like the data's very good, but we've known for a long time that these molecules work. So the data is fantastic, but it's not really a big surprise. Will FDA accept the NDA? And I think if they do, and fingers crossed, then I think that's really positive. I think the CYB3 data that we have coming up is going to be very meaningful. I'm excited to share that. We've submitted some of that data to the FDA for breakthrough therapy designation. That could be a major catalyst. We haven't seen one of those in a while, and certainly not for a novel molecule. And in closing the Small Pharma transaction, obviously, once we get that out of the way, we'll have this larger organization that is really a major player in the space. So I think there's a lot of catalysts coming just in the next few months.
Well, I think there's a lot of investors right now, especially after the two announcements, not pertaining to your company, but the share purchase with Steve Cohen's company last week, the acquisition of Small Pharma, the readouts with your trial in phase 2 related to psilocybin. That's going to happen at some time before Christmas, correct?
Yep.
So when you kind of add all this up and then you look at, say, a company like Compass and their share purchase agreement, which was north of $250 million, you get a sense now as to how this roadmap is starting to work for specific companies, which is really, I think, the learning aspect. The key for this industry to grow is for people to understand what is the pathway to revenue and what are the type of investors that are getting involved. But again, Compass Pathways, like I said, that was a big announcement they had last month. Something that we weren't even talking or discussing about, but look what's happened in the last 30 days pertaining to this industry. And if the data is compelling enough, there's probably going to be a lot of sophisticated investors that are going to want to be part of companies like yourselves. Is that some of the feedback that you're hearing and seeing?
I definitely see that coming. I think I agree with you that the Compass syndicate was very impressive. And those folks, I know it took a long time to get that deal done. And I know many of the funds, and I know that they really did a lot of work. Good news is that they've done all that work, and they're clearly comfortable with the space, and they clearly see a path to commercialization, as they should. So I think that's really good news. We've got a tremendous quarter coming up with data, closing Small Pharma acquisition, breakthrough therapy designation. And I would not be surprised if we saw strong interest in Cybin from some of those investors as we start to share some of that data.
Yeah. Well, one thing's for sure, it's amazing what's happened in 30 days, as much as we're waiting for that otherwise next catalyst moment. Needless to say, it's been huge growth, and it's great to see that we finally turned a corner for the industry, right?
Oh, 2 years and 30 days. That's all it took.
Yeah, no
it's
kidding.
been great. It's like it all hits us at once. We seem to get headlines for cannabis, headlines for psychedelics, and now just everything's snowballing all at once. So our lives got super busy super quickly.
I think the thing too, I think
I can't complain.
Yeah, I think the thing too to look at, Doug, was the just the quality of investors that were part of that Compass announcement, and what's really to come. But some of the feedback, and I'm not trying to like pump the company in any sort of way. It's like Small Pharma had some of the best IP within the industry, and I think that's definitely garnered a lot of attention that pertains to the industry. And a prime example of that obviously is last Friday with what Point72 ended up doing, right?
Look, I mean, collectively with Small Pharma, we'll have 158 pending patents, 28 granted patents. So there's got to be the broadest IP selection in the industry. And more than anything, I think it removes uncertainty around what does our program look like, what does their program look like. You put it all together, and there's strength in that partnership. So I definitely see the CYB4 program, or the deuterated DMT program, as being the flagship. But as you know, we have efficacy data coming for CYB3, and as we go into the first quarter of next year, we'll have a phase 3 ready asset and a phase 2 ready asset.
Yeah,
with lots of IP and hopefully some good investors behind us. We'll see.
Yeah, well, Hoagie D actually writes, thank you guys for doing this interview. Happy to see this happening. Almost up to 200,000 shares at 33 cents. This is an inflection point. So needless to say, like I said, market liked obviously what happened late last Friday. You were up, but what was it? 25% at some point yesterday, Anthony?
38, it was 38% on the close.
38%.
Rocketed in the last hour of trading.
Yeah, but I think we've got some momentum that's building here in this space. But I think with anything, you're starting to see, and as I said this in a few other podcasts, companies really starting to focus on their core assets. When we first got going in this industry, it seemed like there was a lot of trials going on with different compounds, and you really didn't understand what was going on and what. But now we see these mergers and acquisitions. You're really starting to see DMT leader and MDMA leader. It's really focusing. We look at Awaken Life Sciences with their phase 3 with their alcohol use disorder. It's like focusing on 1 to 2 things really, really well that gives people a better understanding as to how the industry will mature.
What's your?
I think that's right.
Go ahead,
you need to focus on the clinical programs first, make progress. We've got a very large virtual library of other potential molecules, maybe 10 to 12 trillion that are covered by IPs. But it's time for that later, once we've gotten proof of concept and we've made some clinical progress.
Yeah.
What's your view on the clinic model, Doug, that we're seeing? I mean, obviously we're seeing a lot of ketamine clinics roll out nationwide in the States, but I mean, we all know like this psychedelic assisted therapy, like it is going to take specialized infrastructure to an extent to roll it out. I mean, what's your take on that, and where do you see that as far as scaling over the next couple of years to cater to the demand once these molecules get through?
The infrastructure is not that specialized. It's a comfortable room with a bathroom, and these molecules that we're delivering, one is an oral capsule, the other is a simple, we expect, subcutaneous injection that a nurse could give or the patient could give to themselves, a bit like Wegovy. So there's not a real need for a really complicated clinical infrastructure, but there is a need for those spaces and for trained personnel. I think it'll largely come down to IT, frankly. I think that the best clinics have managed to figure out how to get patients in and out of their clinic as smoothly and with as least friction as possible. And those that have done that well are making money. Those that did not do that well and had all these bells and whistles did not survive. So I think the best clinics are really focused on that. In our study, a recent study, we almost all of the interactions were video. and telemed. It was
Really?
only the last prep session and the 2 dosing sessions that were in person. All of the other interactions were remote. And so if you can get the protocol right and get your systems right, then there's an opportunity for those clinics to make a profit, which is, the only way they will survive.
Yeah.
So we've asked this question to a few other people. Like, we're going to need a lot of trained therapists real fast. What's your take on that? Like, how is that progressing based on some of the conversations that you had? Because we're going to see a lot of demand as this, again, industry matures and the data proves to be compelling, and approval from the FDA. Like, numbers are forecasted around as to how many therapists that we need. But based on your conversation, is there a lot of interest amongst therapists that are starting to want to learn about this space more and more?
Yeah, so we've made our training program, at least the foundational part of it, open access and free of charge on our website, embarkapproach.com. We've had over 2,000 therapists sign up for training so far.
Wow.
So if you do it right and make these things accessible, there's plenty of demand there. The goal for that is that therapists can begin to do the foundational training online. It's self-guided, about 14 videos. And then there's an amount of in-person training to finish it off. But we're trying to set that sort of foundation now and get as many people trained so that as we scale phase 3 or as we move to commercialization, that those therapists are already primed and ready to go.
What are we looking at timeline-wise? Some of the trials, if they prove to pan out the way you're hoping to, but full-on commercialization, what year is some of the trials that you're working on that you'll see?
Yeah, we plan to start phase 3 around the end of the first quarter next year.
Okay.
It's an 18 to 24 month study. Sometime during that study, we'll start the second one, so it'll be staggered. And so you're looking at still with approval timelines 3 to 4 years before we get to market. But that's pretty fast, really, for drug development. When you look at that in context to other novel drugs, that can take over a decade to get to market.
Yeah. And then you think about how much the industry will, there's other things that maybe you're not working specifically on, but it's going to draw attention and interest towards the space. And who knows where that's going to look like in 3 to 4 years. But needless to say, we're all headed in the right direction, right?
Yeah, look, once you get to phase 3, it's really all about execution. You've proven that the drug is safe. You've proven that it's effective. Now, then it's about executing a robust set of phase 3 studies with good, robust science, good data integrity. It's less about development risk and more about execution at that point.
Yeah.
And that's why valuations increase.
Yeah. One thing that impressed me the most, you've been doing this for 2, 3, 4 years now. You look even younger than what you did 2 years ago. Guys, the sharpest dressed man in the space, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's got to be this camera. That's what it is.
Listen, congrats, obviously, great acquisition. Clearly, there's some sophisticated, smart money that's seeing things that maybe the average investor is not. But it's always a delight to catch up with you and just keep the good work going. And most importantly, just pushing the narrative forward for the overall industry to ultimately help, everyday people.
Yeah, we are getting there. We're slowly getting there. Yeah, it's good to see the momentum. Really exciting for the whole sector, not just for us. So thanks for having me on, guys.
All right. Thanks, Doug. Appreciate your time,
Doug.
Take care.
All right.
I don't know what it looked like at your end, but all I kept seeing was weird faces of mine being frozen up. So
yeah, we're just going to 1 second. We're going to bring in Ben, but we're okay here now. But Doug, appreciate your time, and we'll follow up with you a little bit later. Anybody that wants to have any questions for Mr. Drysdale, leave a comment below. We'll get back with some information and get back to you with any questions that you have asked with some feedback from him. Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, guys.
All right, let's bring in Benny Boy.
How's it going, everyone?
Yeah, that was an interesting conversation, to say the least.
I love what they're doing.
Yeah,
I love what Doug's doing. I love who they have involved. It's intriguing story.
Yes, Jake, we did know that we were still live. But yeah, I was just trying to cut him off there, not make sure he didn't say anything inappropriate. But yeah, all is good. But anyways, interesting conversation to say the least. But like you said, you guys have talked about like company to watch for this fall, because when we look at comparables to other companies and the overall general interest that it's garnering, like we said with Compass, that's beginning of phase 3 and the amount of investors involved in that and how much money was raised in a private placement. This is a company, like I said, with that acquisition, people think that Small Pharma had some of the best IP within the industry. So yeah, there's a lot to like about that acquisition and the direction of this company now.
Yeah. I mean, it's a strong player in the space. I mean, it's a formidable name. From an investment perspective, I have a lot of apprehension deploying capital into the space just because of the opacity and the unknown and the capital markets that we've seen.
Yeah.
But I mean, Cybin is strong. They're a formidable player and a strong presence in the space.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Just an observation here, but when I look at this, it seems to me, obviously Point72 Capital Asset Management they could have chose anyone. They could have invested in a Thai or Compass or some of the bigger players, but they went with Doug. And what does Doug have that the others don't?
What does he have?
Deep pharma experience. Like he's led a pharma organization before, and it's like we've talked about in actually several different industries that you really have to, like, betting on biopharma. It's such an intricate, hard thing to do. You really have to have a good jockey. And I think Doug provides that more than anybody in the space. So
yeah,
I mean, I think he nailed it. I think he nailed it on the head. And I mean, I haven't really thought about it till he just said it. But once you get into phase 3, you're talking about now there's there's very little development risk. Now it's execution risk,
right?
Where you're dead on. That is the jockey. That is the C-suite and the management team that's going to take this thing home and actually get it to commercialization, which is a pretty good point. And it's one of the one of the strengths of Cybin's the bench. I mean, the human capital they're getting from Small Pharma is great too.
Yeah,
we've met all of them. I mean, they're strong players in the space.
Well, he outlined.
So
he's like, now's the time to buy. You don't wait for commercialization. Some of the talk we had with
not financial advice, by the way, anybody listening.
Yes, not financial, like just feedback that he's saying. But
yeah,
as we discussed with an analyst before or earlier this week, was saying that just the idea of some of these companies that are starved for cash that are on a lot smaller exchange, it's tough to obviously trade. But with Cybin being in the New York Stock Exchange, that's just more appealing. Before we get
we've already seen
liquidity.
it too. We've already seen it, like in this space, in this actual space. We've seen, for example, Compass. There's been thoughts that the results have been pretty good, but there are thoughts that their dosing has been a little bit low on the psilocybin side. So where I'm getting at is you have to have a good jockey because they lead the trial design, right? They approve the trial design, and that is a critical component of a phase trial. So Doug is leading all that, and he's, as an experienced guy, leading an organization that does that. I mean, that's a very critically important thing. So it makes sense to me that they're betting on they're betting on Doug just as much as they're betting on Cybin, probably, I would think.
There's no better
hearing something like the uptake time and the actual therapeutic time of deuterated DMT being 40 minutes versus something we're talking about with like potential 6 to 8 hours. I mean, that also can't be taken for granted. Granted, the efficacy might be different across molecules for different indications, but if I'm betting on a business, efficiency is definitely one thing that needs to be taken into consideration here.
Yeah.
The one question I have, just to bring on your point very quickly, is I have questions about the durability because there are, I have my ear close to the ground in this industry, and a lot of people are wondering whether durability is going to be an issue with the compounds that have short acting life cycles, like psilocybin, 2 hours instead of 6 or 8. If you can develop something in 2 hours instead of having somebody in a clinic for 7 or 8 hours, it's obviously desirable, right? In and out a lot quicker. The durability is going to be a big factor here. Do you get the same results at 2 hours as you would get at 7 or 8? And if you can, you got a golden ticket, because then you can, that's 3 outpatient services a day, potentially, instead of just one.
And what do you go through mentally and physically to go through a session that's 40 minutes to an hour? Like, that would be pretty extreme.
Yeah. Is the therapeutic window open enough is the big question. Like at 20 minutes, DMT is 25 minutes, your onset, offset. but is the therapeutic window open where the mind can make those changes with the therapy for long enough? That's the big $1 million question. If I knew the answer to that right now, I'd go all in on, you know, a select bunch.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming the couple of days following any of these PAT therapies, like they're pretty rough. I mean, you probably need to get back to equilibrium after an experience like that. I mean, just doing drugs recreationally, like if you take psilocybin in like a macro dose, you feel a little spacey the next day. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it's
we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. The days following, though, I mean, there probably is a period of like, getting back dialed into normal.
By the way, important to share, all views on the Trade to Black podcast and the guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us or guests as investment advice, and the views on this podcast are solely intended to be informational and are not investment advice. Well, this has been good. I think when you start to see acquisitions made and then some smart money coming in and buying a specific company, like you said, Ben, we've known for a long time that Doug Drysdale has a big pharma background, but now you start to understand more and more as to how that's influential as the industry starts to materialize and grow, and some companies fall on the wayside and others come to the forefront, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's all about the jockey in this space, and Doug is the only one who checks the boxes, as far as I can tell from the, you know, the tier ones, you know, what the ones considered tier one in this industry. Yeah. Doug is the one that checks the boxes the most out of anybody.
How would you, gents?
Cannabis.
How would you, gents, on that day? Cannabis stocks.
I was just gonna say, what you think of the tape going into the close, Ben? It got a little spicy.
Oh yeah, you bought in, or did you buy the dip, or you you're waiting?
No, I'm not buying the dip. I'm not buying this dip. I'll buy the dip maybe Friday if we see continued weakness, but I'm not dipping any of my toes in now.
People freaking out about those raises yesterday.
I mean, I think there's psychology. I mean, I saw Curaleaf was down 15%, and then you saw Twitter just go off. Oh, is Curaleaf going to raise? Is Curaleaf going to raise? Is there something people don't know? I mean, if Curaleaf raises at a discount, that's a problem for MSOS. Pretty sure it's the heaviest holding in there right now, between that and GTI. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, the underlying assets all raising, especially at a discount. If they start to get downward pressure on them, that's going to cause MSOS to draw down as well in price. So I'm not toeing in right now. I'm in my positions. I'm holding steady and waiting to see what happens. I mean, the 27th is only 8 days away.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a new article on the Dales report. Go check it out if you have a chance. And that's basically the premise. I think about how the discount to market that those two raises got. And again, do you want to wake up one morning with probably 2/3 of the cannabis sector eligible to raise or could easily raise, and then you're down 15 or 20% to the last print the previous day? That's a tough pill to swallow. So that obviously you're going to have people kind of pull back and retrench and sort of reevaluate position when the momentum runs out and say, hey, you know what, maybe we'll give this a couple days, and maybe I don't want to, if Air or whatever company raises, and I don't want to be caught with a musical chair or not having one.
Yeah. I mean, I thought the most interesting thing of the day, to be honest, was the Columbia Care rebrand. Not only because of the name change, but someone brought up on Twitter that the fact that they changed the symbol and it switched to a different QSIP in the system, it alleviates it from any of the naked shorts or the short positions that were on CCHW. Those houses would have to reinitiate their positions on the new symbol and the new stock.
Can't they just transfer it over?
I think so. One of the corp dev guys from C21 was on, giving like a pretty in-depth reasoning as to why. But I'm not sure you can like ACAT or DWAC a short position over from stock to stock.
So what you're saying is this could have been a maneuver to get
clean
some
out the shorts
out, which are purportedly high, instead of just like, okay, we want to forget about the Cresco deal that fell through. We just want to rebrand, and it's just a marketing ploy. This could be something else.
Thoughts on
a combination of both.
All right. Well, John writes thoughts on Columbia Care name change, which you just indicated. What happens to old warrants, April 2024? I do not
Those
know.
warrants are probably still good. I mean, the warrants aren't going to change. The warrants that entire capital stack and that share structure is just transferred over. So the equity options and warrants stay the same.
He's going to be on Toby's space today. Is that the CEO of Columbia Care?
Yeah, it's either going to be I'm sure it's either going to be the CEO or the chief commercial officer.
Interesting comment here. Someone's writing, I think the government shutdown possibility is driving the red more than anything else. What do you think about that, Anthony? I haven't really, I haven't really thought about that all that much.
So I actually tweeted it out earlier that there's 33 trillion reasons that safe banking might get held up. And that was in reference to the potential government shutdown and the national debt that's going on. I mean, I don't see it. I mean, we get around this, we drive this rhetoric every time, and the conversation comes around and they start butting heads. We're going to shut this down. We're not going to shut this down. And then they alleviate the need to shut down.
Yeah, it's a big ploy. It never actually happens, right?
I think it's bullshit. And I mean, I think it's a lot of posturing, but at the same time, you got to talk about the politicians' bandwidth. And the banking committee is not going to be focused on safe or even paying attention to safe when they've got a potential government shutdown looming. That being said, I don't think that the possibility of that should drive down the prices of any of these stocks or add to the uncertainty, especially since we do sit here and say that cannabis is not correlated to the macro. So, I mean, if you believe that, then I would say no, that the potential for a government shutdown is not the reason that we're seeing drawdowns on these stocks. I would put it more so towards a lot of the people in these names right now are not bag holders. A lot of the people that are in these names had cash on the sidelines. They saw an opportunity with the HHS headline and they got in the trade. At some point, if you buy a stock and it triples or quadruples, you better fucking sell the thing and take some profits. Whether you believe in the sector or not, that's just common risk management. I think some of that froth might be coming out right now, and we're going to see some consolidation and then reset into some new bases. But I don't think we're going back to doomsday where we were.
And just a reminder, when you're saying about you taking profits, you're referring to yourself.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, gents. Well, good little podcast with Doug Drysdale today. And I guess we'll watch this closely. We got another podcast, Trade to Black, pre-recorded, coming out tomorrow. We talk a lot about, just whether the rally's dead or not. And then what can we expect as far as, next week heading into the news pertaining to safe banking. John writes, estimated price on possible money raise value. No idea.
I wish I knew that.
Money raise for Cybin?
I'm assuming he's talking about just for several holders in the sector. I mean, the good thing is I highly doubt Trulieve, Curaleaf, Verano, or any of the tier ones raise here at all. I mean, they all had pretty healthy cash positions as of Q2 ending. I don't think they need to raise.
Yeah.
They could. I mean, like we said earlier,
Curaleaf raising though, if they didn't have that revolving credit facility, and that's what Boris mentioned a few weeks back, because they were down to like 80 million, and then they got the notes coming up, 50 million due January 2024. So, but they do have a revolving credit facility from our understanding. So probably, I think they're fine for now. Yeah.
I'm going to send you guys an email a little bit later on. A company called Carisdale Capital. I had quite the story about Tilray. I don't know how credible that is, but
it's amazing how Afria, it doesn't matter what happens. We all know the short report that came out, 5-6 years ago now. And now they rolled into Tilray, who bought them, and now another short report. So I don't know what it is with that company. They seem to attract the short sellers.
I could tell you. I mean, I could tell you what it is. I mean, Afria is littered with unsavory characters from the get-go, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Some of which are still in the plumbing. I mean, I watched Afria. I watched some of the people that invested in Afria take a license in Malta and sell it to themselves for like 600 million in that crazy Nuvera deal. I mean, they've still got ghosts in the closet. Granted, who was it? Citron that came out with a short report on Afria the last time around. Hindenburg. So Hindenburg came out with a short report on Afria, and the thing fucking went parabolic. I mean, Afria went down, but with a vengeance ripped to the upside.
Yeah.
On the backsides of that. So I mean, we'll
Love
see.
that company, Nuvera. What were they public for? What, 12 days?
Nuvera was public for 12 days. I got pitched at a Canaccord event to come in at like a $300 million valuation. I was like, no, thank you. 2 weeks later, $680 million acquired by Aphria. Come to find out, it was simply a piece of paper granting a Malta license.
Yeah, there's something shady there.
Yeah.
I will say to add too, for all Tilray investors, that the good news here is that although Tilray's been weak with the rest of the sector, they don't appear to be. It didn't really get a lot of juice, the short report, outside of normal selling. Like Tilray was down today, what, 5-6% when I looked. Yesterday it was down a lot, but it wasn't really down more than Canopy or Aurora. It was down, it was down a good amount, 14-15%, somewhere around that range. But with the short report, it didn't really go outside of some of the big losers in the sector. So I don't think there's tons of juice on that report.
Did we?
Well, go ahead, Prashad.
I was going to say, no, finish that thought.
I was going to say, I mean, if you're a long-term investor in this space, if you don't think that what Tilray are doing in the US and in the EU is going to be of value on a go-forward basis down the road, and I'm talking like 5 to 10 years, then you're not looking big enough. I mean, I do firmly believe this industry is going to look like alcohol, with the exception of maybe interstate commerce coming in the next decade. Irwin's made moves to get into the beverage space. The distribution company that Aphria owned that came into via the Tilray merger, I mean, that thing is throwing off a ton of revenue, and it's in all the marquee markets in the EU. The EU is going to come online. It's just probably going to take another 5 years.
Yeah.
That being said, I mean, the short report has validity when they're talking about issuing people stock and they've got a dilution problem. I mean, Aphria might have a dilution problem. That short report came out at the same time they tried to authorize another 300 million shares.
Yeah.
In their share count. I don't own Tilray. I don't plan to own Tilray, but I do like the business the underlying business that they have.
I can't lie though, that share float is quite high. It would be nice if they weren't, if they do have a bloated share count. It'd be nice if it was a little bit less, but I'm sure they have long-term strategies to mitigate that.
That's where a lot of this short report I was reading pertains to, is the outstanding share float. Lucifer, good to see you, brother. Yeah, I know. I know.
Bloated share count's not really. Give me fundamental things that are fundamentally wrong or fraud. Then I'll show you a short report that's valid.
Yeah, it's not a reason for a short report. It would be nice if it was a little bit more fluid.
It sucks for an equity investor if they've got 1.2 billion shares outstanding. It's going to take some serious power to move the stock, but at the same time, like it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a unvalued company.
Yeah. Lucifer, what's up, brother? Good to see you. Thanks for chiming in. What's up, boys? You guys think the slip downward in the market today is similar to the sell-off before earnings type of pattern?
Not really, because I don't really see the sector really moving on earnings. Like it never really moves up pre-earnings calendar season, and it doesn't really move when the earnings come out. So I don't really see it like this. I think it's more akin to what happened with in November 2022 with SAFE, when there was all that hopes that the second time around that would be included in the NDAA and that it would be included there. And it obviously wasn't. And then the market tanked from there. But we did had like a nice run up, something kind of similar to this. Maybe this was a little bit more voracious, but more similar to that. Hopefully we don't have the same result at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. We tweeted out this morning, Michael Auerbach launched a new cannabis ETF. Question, new cannabis ETF, Auerbach, Jason, referring to Jason Spatafora. You guys looked at this ETF? Any thoughts, feedback pertaining to it?
I was surprised the amount of vitriol that we got in regards to Michael Auerbach on Twitter. I posted that in like a benign. Yeah, I mean, I posted that in a benign way, basically just saying, oh, there's another cannabis ETF on the block. And everyone was like, fuck Michael Auerbach, like boom, 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 just vitriol all the way down the thread. I was like, well, that's new. That wasn't something that I've seen before, but I mean, it's kind of a blasé, to be honest. As far as their holdings, it's Curaleaf, GTI, Verano, Columbia Care. I mean, let's see how it does. It's apparently a long short, actively managed ETF, so they can go short specific things. And I think via their investment mandates, they can actually go outside of cannabis to a degree, so they can short Qs or like short SPYs if they want to hedge against their positions. But I don't see anything like super attractive as of right now. I'm going to watch it though. I'm definitely going to watch it. It's definitely on my radar.
Follow up to what we said before. Lucifer then writes, I mean, regarding the upcoming vote towards the safe vote coming on the 27th. Don Murphy said he had a GOP senator give him a thumbs up and call out September 27th to him across the lunchroom.
Yep, I saw that. We'll have Don on Space 8 o'clock on Thursday night.
Yeah, Lucifer, everybody, it's, listening. And if anybody that watches this live stream later on tonight, Don Murphy's 8 o'clock Thursday.
8 o'clock Thursday.
Okay.
Be like a nice little cannabis State of the Union as to what's going on. Hopefully we get some market action to the upside. That will be interesting. to pair with having Don on.
We had a strategy call yesterday, and one of the things we thought about maybe doing, we'd love to hear people's feedback about having one of our viewers that logs on to this live stream and gives us great comments all the time. If they'd like to join us once a month on a podcast, what do you guys think?
I'm for it. I mean, that was my idea, wasn't it?
Was it your idea?
I think it was.
I'll give you credit.
Well, that's one reason to be for it, right?
Yeah.
Well,
or yeah. I mean, I think that'd be great. Get somebody get somebody up here once a month.
Yeah. Anybody that's interested, we're trying to figure out what the details of that contest might be, but let us know. You like the idea of maybe winning an opportunity to come on to our podcast, give us your thoughts. Be great. Anyways, gents, we're going 47 minutes into this podcast. Thanks for checking in. Hope everybody enjoyed the information with Doug. Very helpful. And we'll watch this market closely to see whether or not, like I said, are we taking a pause? Or are we going to have more of a pullback pertaining to the industry?
Sounds
All
good.
should send questions ahead of time. Yes.
$64,000 question. Is it going up or is it going down? And
right.
Let's see. Let's hold 725. That's the big line in the sand. We talk about more discussion about this in the podcast tomorrow. So
yeah. All right, guys. Thanks. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Take care.